Now what I have here is a Chefman model RJ54-V2 espresso machine. And my brother tells me it won't froth and sometimes leaves a puddle of water behind. And he thinks he may have broken something because the milk reservoir doesn't feel right, removing or inserting it. I've never used it, so I'm not sure what it's supposed to feel like, but just knowing something is different might help find the problem. Let me try the frother out first. Well, a lot of steam, but I don't see what would be the milk level going down any. I'm sure I should see it drop some. Yeah, that can't be the way it's supposed to work. No puddle of water under it, but he said that was sometimes there would be a puddle of water. Let me try the cappuccino setting. Again, just steam and no what would be milk coming out. He said the coffee part was working fine. A little splatter of water, but no puddle. Let me see what a clean cycle does. I don't know if that steam at the start is normal or not. Now water is coming out of the frother tube, but the level in the milk reservoir is not dropping, so that water is coming from the main water tank. Well, let me stop it. I see water where it shouldn't be. Wow, that's not just a little leak. That would make a huge mess. It looked like the water was running down the back of the milk reservoir. So there's one connection at the back of the milk reservoir. It looks fine, no cracks or broken pieces. And it connects to the machine right up here at this fitting. And I think the problem has been found. That groove there in the fitting, it's not there for style points. No doubt a seal has gone missing. Unfortunately, it doesn't look like a groove for an O-ring. So let me look and see if any parts are available for this thing. I didn't spend hours looking, but I didn't see any parts available for it. Another one of the throwaway appliances, I guess. So here's a close-up of the fitting. Wow, they didn't even remove plastic mold flash from where the seal has to seat. Let me get the caliper and see what the measurements are. The groove has a diameter of 9.4 millimeters. The outside of the fitting has a diameter of about 11 millimeters. And the groove width is about 3 millimeters. Now the inside diameter of the fitting on the milk reservoir is right at 12 millimeters. And of course, none of the fittings are extremely round. So I did have a few 9mm ID, 12mm OD, 1.5mm cross-section O-rings. If it was a very smooth connection, I think these would be about the right size. But with how rough that plastic is with the mold flash, I'm not sure. Fits good going on and off. Makes for more resistance to remove and install the milk reservoir now. Probably the way it should be. I don't know what these O-rings are made of, but at least I can test fit them. Let me see if it will seal with this size O-ring. I'll just run a bit of a clean cycle. Nope, not going to make it. Kinda hard to see, but a little bit of water is dripping from the fitting. I even tried with double O-rings. Still water leaking from the fitting, a bit less than the single, but I am shooting for no leaks. Well, I need a tiny bit larger cross-section for the O-ring. My next size up in metric is, I believe, 2 millimeters, and that will be way too big. Okay, the next closest size I have is a number 11. It has a cross-section of 0.07 inches. That is just a bit under 1.8 millimeters, which I think will fit. The problem is the number 11 has an ID of 7.65 millimeters, and that is really just too much stretching for the O-ring. But it's all I have. Well, milk reservoir does go on and off. It is tight, really tight. But I think it will have to be not to leak. It's got to be pressed around all that rough plastic to form a seal. Let me give it a try and see. So that was an entire clean cycle and a froth cycle. And I had no water dripping from the fitting. So a number 11 O-ring will seal it. The O-ring being able to roll around in that groove is going to be a problem. And the groove is just not wide enough to put two of them in. So at the very least it will shorten the life of the O-ring. But I would expect it to get rolled off the fitting every now and then. I would say using a number 11 O-ring would be an emergency fix. The craving for the cappuccino just can't wait. So if you have an O-ring box, it probably has a number 11 in it. Or I would think it could be found in just about any hardware store plumbing aisle. But it would only be a temporary fix. I really believe the 1.5mm cross-section O-ring should seal it, and I think that mold flashing on the fitting is probably causing the O-ring not to seal. So I'm going to cut me some thin strips of sandpaper and see what I can do about it. I've got some 380, 800, and 1200 grit. Couldn't find the 600. I know I've got a few sheets of it left, but these grits should get the job done. Of course, I'm going to start with the 380 grit. Turns out there is mold flash on both sides of the fitting. Makes me kind of wonder if this thing might have always leaked a bit. I did end up cutting my strips just a bit under 3mm wide. It is really a tight space to get into, but I mainly want to hit the sides of the fitting where the mold flash is. I'll put a bit of water on the 800 and 1200 grits. Really, the 1200 grit is not needed, but why not? I've got it. So now that I've gotten rid of the mold flash, let me see if these 1.5mm O-rings will seal it. That feels good going on and coming off. Feels firm, but not like I'm having to force it. I'll run a clean and froth cycle and see if it will make it through them. No leaks through a couple of clean and a couple of froth cycles, so the mold flashing was causing the problem. But whatever these O-rings are made of, it's not going to cut it. They get hot and lose some of their elasticity. These are probably made for low temperature refrigeration, just the opposite of what I need. Also, the fitting has a bit of a bevel in the grooves where the O-rings have to go. If these were silicone, they might work, but I still think there would be a possibility to pop one off every now and then. So I'm going to go for a bit of an extra stretch on the O-ring, more than I would like, but I think it's going to be needed to stay on the fitting. So what I have here are some 8mm ID, 11mm OD, 1.5mm cross-section O-rings. I do know what these are made of. Well, if Harbor Freight got the info correct. These are made of nitrile and have a 70 shore hardness rating. So I know they won't hold up long-term to the steam. I'll have to order some silicone replacements if these work okay. I'll run a few cleaning and froth cycles and see how they do. I think this was cleaning number 3 and I've run the frother 4 or 5 times. That seems to push the steam through the fitting. And there's been no leaks. Here is the frother going again. It's nice to see the fluid level drop in the milk reservoir. I think that is how it's supposed to work. Well, the nitrile O-rings are doing much better than those yellow ones. Still really firm feeling. Those yellow ones just got a bit squishy when hot. Milk reservoir feels firm going in and coming off, not overly tight. I can put it in place without having to hold the entire machine. Couldn't do that with the number 11 O-ring. I really think that's going to work. Even though the nitrile O-rings are not getting soft, they are not made for steam temperature. Really, over time at the higher temperatures, they may just get brittle. Not sure how they break down. So I'll order some silicone O-rings to replace these. I even think I can get some food-grade silicone ones this size. Well, really only one thing left to try. I've never used an espresso/cappuccino machine before. I like my black coffee in the morning, and I've really had no desire to change that. So I've read the instructions. Doesn't really say how much coffee to put in. I guess more coffee, more strong. I'll put about 1.5 scoops in. I'm going to run the double cappuccino and see what happens. Not sure how hard I should press it down either. It's using pressurized hot water, so I think it should be pressed down pretty hard. I would think the tighter it's pressed, the stronger the coffee would be. Well, guess it would depend on if it's a fixed amount of water put through the coffee. I have no idea how much milk it takes. But my brother said use a big cup, and that's the biggest one that would fit. it's not the quietest little machine. That coffee almost looks like it has a thickness to it. Oh, that's it? That would fit in a regular size coffee cup. I'll add a bit of extra froth. Maybe he said latte is what he uses. I kinda just remember the problems the machine was having. The rest of the conversation not so much. Well, I don't know. Is that what it's supposed to look like? I guess the important thing is it drinkable? That's not bad. For someone who likes their black coffee in the morning, I think that turned out pretty good. A little bit of sugar and that could be considered a dessert, I would say. Yeah, not bad. Not bad at all. I might need to expand my coffee consuming horizons. But I probably won't. I know this is a very cheap espresso machine, but to throw it in the garbage for the lack of one tiny seal seems like such a waste. Now, if anyone happens to know where a proper seal for this thing can be obtained, would sure appreciate a comment on it. But for now, it's been saved from the garbage heap. Thank you for watching.